take?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're talking about reggae in Zimbabwe. But as we talk about reggae in Zimbabwe, I think it's always important to talk about reggae and Rasta at the same time, because the two, we can't make no separate the two of them, because they're one and the same thing. When you talk about Rasta, you marry it to reggae. When you talk about reggae, you marry it to Rasta. So I'm gonna talk about both of them at the same time. I'm gonna mix up so that the story can come out clear. With reggae in Zimbabwe, we started having, you know, like introduction of reggae in the 70s. Well, by then, a lot of people didn't really appreciate what reggae is all about, because it came in little bits, and it was with those who had access, or who had people or friends and relatives who were out there in the foreign, who could, you know, send us some rhythm, you know, some dub plates. Then it was, of course, the vinyl type of dub plate we were using that time. I remember then I used to get a lot of those from a virgin-in-law. Somebody was married to Anna's sister, and he lived in Germany. And I remember in the '79 playing the, what you call it, Bob Marley Babylon Bypass double album thing. That was when about reggae started, you know, trickling into Zimbabwe until about 1980. And the interesting and fascinating thing about 1980 and reggae music is that, well, not only 1980, in fact, the interesting thing about reggae and Zimbabwe in 1980 was that reggae music, as we all know, is a music, it's a music about the struggle of the black man, or about the levity of the black man. So, looking at the background of the black man all over the world, the black man has had a lot of trials and tribulations in their lives. And at the time that reggae was introduced to Zimbabwe, that was when, coincidentally, we were also having our independence from these trials and tribulations from Babylon. So it made a very strong coincidence, the reggae music and the period that we were facing in Zimbabwe. So that gave people a lot of strength towards working as a strong black nation, which could link up and associate themselves with other black nations outside the world, like, well, the people in the Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Trinidad, and so forth, who had the same sentiments, just like Zimbabweans as well. So that's when reggae was nationally and strongly introduced to this country with the coming of Bob Marley at our celebration of independence in 1980. That was a serious moment, because Bob Marley and reggae music make a very important contribution in the story of the Zimbabwean independence. Because on that very day, that's when Bob Marley sang the song about Zimbabwe while the British flag was being pulled down and the Zimbabwean flag was being raised. That made an international mark the whole world. And every time we talk about the Bob Marley story in full, I don't think it would be wise to talk about the Bob Marley story without talking about his visit to Zimbabwe and the raising of our flag on Independence Day. That was something very important in our history, or in the history of reggae music in the world. Then, as years trickled by, in the early 90s, reggae began to gain ground. With the coming in of more reggae outfits from Jamaica and Europe and all the other parts of the world where reggae had already flourished and taken ground. So it was when we had, I remember where the Mistin Roots were some of the earliest international reggae outfits to come to Zimbabwe. And Oswald was also one of them. We had the Igerman Device. We had Greg Isaacs at one time. We had we have quite a number. The list goes on until up to now. We still have a lot of them coming in. Then about the mid-80s, late 80s thereabout, we had the coming in of more Jamaican influence and more reggae influence into the country. When we had people or elders and Brazilians like Ras Jablani coming into the country as well. It's a man that I have to mention in the talk about reggae and Rasta in Zimbabwe, because his contribution to that level is of a very deep magnitude and of very importance, very important in the story about reggae in Zimbabwe, you know. There and then, like late 80s, that's when we also had the introduction of dancehall music. But before we had strong dancehall music going on around, we also had the introduction of local bands or local artists also trying to work with reggae music as a music or as a catalyst that they could use to write upon their lyrics and spread the positive message in reggae music. So then we had the development of new bands in Zimbabwe which were reggae oriented or which played this reggae genre, mimicking Jamaican artists as well, mimicking some of the other foreign reggae artists as well. Then I remember that's the time we had artists like Yappy Bantan mimicking some of the Jamaican songs that the youth from Barre. That's when there was this uprise in the fever for reggae music. And also dancehall music, that's when it took a lot of its beginning moments with the introduction of sound systems like Star Time, Small X, Stereo One. We had, in the early times, even Dandaro Rockers. We had guys like Jerry, the white man, also used to did a lot of contribution in the beginning and setting up of reggae PA systems that would give the proper sound that you'd want in a dancehall. That's when we also had brethrens like Ashanti that time. Such Rastas were very influential in our community as a developing Rasta society. We had Rastas like Chisia. We had Rastas like Ephraim of the Prophecy Sound. We had Gavi. We had Muffin them still, Eddie Muffin and Startime Crew, the Lekupi, JJs. We had Shumba also. Banguri was very influential that time. Who else? Namo, Chitimbe, Farai Shambare. I remember all those bridges played quite big parts in the development of reggae influence around. We also had strong Rastas like Scientists. We had strong Rastas like Doomy. A lot of these bridges still hang around, but many of them, of course, they've gone scattered around with the search for, you know, the trot for liberty and jobs and things like that. The kind of system that we prevail in is actually forcing a lot of us to part ways so that we don't concentrate and congregate and put our ideas as a society together. And up about then, there's also been a strong development in the type of reggae music that Zimbabwe has come up with in the movement of time. We have seen new artists, and in fact, it is also important for us to mention the influence of transit crew and crucial mix in the grooming of a lot of the artists that we have who are permanently dominant in the industry, in the reggae industry today. I would say the likes of Culture T, the late Culture T, the likes of Junior Bantan, the likes of Lady Tanda, the likes of
Mike.
Yeah, Mike Ainito also is one dominant example that we have. We have quite a lot of these artists who sprouted during that time in our family, and most of them are still running and doing well up to now. It's just that the platform that we are running on right now is kind of different from that we had in the early times, like in the 80s, in the 90s. This is due to a lot of other economic developments in our environment or in our country or in our region that contribute to many of these changes. But as we saw the development of reggae music, we also happened to witness a movement or a shift from just mimicking Jamaican music, but bringing in Shona lyrics with Shona arrangement into the music, which brought different or a creative style of reggae music, which was brought about by this fusion of the Jamaican style of reggae and the Zimbabwean style of reggae. And up to now, we've even gone to an extent where the influence of reggae music in its original state and dancehall music, that fusion has also brought about a new genre which is at the tops in Zimbabwe, which we now call Zim dancehall. That came about through the influences of dancehall music and reggae music. And at the same time, that fusion I'm talking about of the Shona type of lyrical arrangement into this vibration.